Hear me?
I can hear you.
Super. I'm going to go ahead and use this. Welcome to our Beit Knesset. I have to not stand under that because it squeaks. Beit Knesset is the Hebrew word that in English, actually in Greek, is called synagogue, which means a place of gathering. You are in one of our school's 3 synagogues. We have 3 because we have so many students who have to pray at the same time, we don't all fit into one space. There are a couple of things that I want to point out to you are always in a Beit Knesset. I'm going to explain a little bit about all the stuff that I'm wearing briefly first. I am dressed for prayer. I am an adult male, and I'm dressed for morning prayer. I wouldn't wear anything particular or different for afternoon or evening prayers. We pray 3 times a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, as well as blessings before and after meals, at special events. In the morning prayers, adult men, and many adult women in our community, wear 4-cornered garments with fringes, because there's a commandment in the Bible that says that when you have 4-cornered garments, you make fringes to remind yourself of the commandments. On my head and on my arm, I am wearing what in the Hebrew are called tefillin, in English get translated as phylacteries. They are leather boxes with small pieces of parchment in them. In fact, with the pieces of parchment upon which are written the commandment to always have the commandments of God in front of you, in between your eyes, literally, and on your arm to strengthen your actions in the world. I put it on in particular so that you would see this is how I would come to prayer. Our students are not yet old enough. When they become 12 or 13, depending on their community, in some communities, girls take on commandments formally at 12, in some communities at 13, and boys always at 13. They might begin wearing tefillin and talit at morning prayers. As an adult male, this is how I am ready for morning prayers. In our synagogue, a synagogue is generally any place. It's any place where people come together to pray. It can be in a formal room. Sometimes our students pray in their classrooms. We always pray with a siddur, which is an ordered book of prayer. So this is a large one. So the leaders in the synagogue will pray from a large one. It's easier to see. But each of our students has her or his own prayer book. Our students get their official prayer book in 2nd grade. And it has in it all of the prayers that we say in the morning. Actually, also in the afternoon and the evening. I'll get to readings in a second. Our siddurim have both English and Hebrew. Our students pray in Hebrew. Not everyone who comes into synagogues can pray in Hebrew. And except for a couple of prayers, you are permitted to pray in any language that you speak. There are a couple of prayers that are still very important that must always be said in Hebrew. Our students learn the prayers in Hebrew and learn how to pray from the siddur in Hebrew. The prayers in the siddur are based in many parts on biblical verses, on psalms, on pieces from the prophets and from the Bible, as well as words that have been put together over the course of generations of devotion for helping people to focus. So everyone will always have a siddur. In a formal synagogue, which is where we're sitting, there are a couple things you will always see. There are a couple things I'll point out that are particular in our synagogue. You will always see an ark. Arks can look all different ways, and an ark is a special cabinet in which a Torah scroll, a scroll of the Bible, is kept. You will also usually have in front of the ark what's called a ner tamid, a light reminding you that there's a Torah scroll in the ark and we should behave carefully and respectfully. In this particular ark, the ner tamid is built in. Sometimes it's hanging from the ceiling in the front. The ark can look all different kinds of ways. The ner tamid can look different kinds of ways. But inside, what makes a synagogue a special place to behave is that we have Torah scrolls. One of the key parts, in addition to our praying from the siddur of Jewish prayer, is that 4 times a week we gather together in communities and read from the Torah. All of our 4th grade students began learning to read last year from the Torah and can read almost pretty fully independently by now. You can get your own parshiot and learn that. A Sefer Torah is written on a parchment scroll. It's not a book. It is a very ancient form, and we're very careful to maintain this as the center of our reading, of our worship. We read small pieces on Monday and Wednesday, on Thursday mornings, Monday and Thursday mornings, and on Saturday afternoons, and a big long piece on Saturday mornings at Shabbat prayers when we're all together. So if you see, this scroll is written on parchment. Parchment is a very thin piece of animal skin from a kosher animal, so meaning from a cow or a sheep or a goat. The writing on the Torah scroll is done by someone who is a specially trained scribe. This is all written by hand. It takes about a year to write one of these. And when a scribe writes it, he's copying very carefully. It's very important not to add even one letter. In a Torah scroll, there are 304,580 individual letters. Every single one must be there in the right place. You can't add one, you can't be missing one. Or we can't read from this as a community. The part that it's rolled to is the part where the Ten Commandments is written in the middle of the book of Exodus. I want to read a little piece for you briefly so you can hear what it sounds like and what our students learn to do in reading from the Torah scroll. Vaydaber Elohim eid kol hadvarim ha'ele lemor Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim מבית עבדים לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פניי לא תעשה לך פסל וכל תמונה אשר בשמיים ממעל ואשר בארץ מתחת ואשר במים מתחת לארץ לא תשתחווה להם ולא תעבדם כי אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אלקנה פוקד עוון אבות על בנים על שילשים ועל רבעים לשונאי ועושה חסד לאלפים לאוהבי ולשומרי מצוותיי. What I just read to you is the first commandment. That is God's declaration to the people that there is one God. It's something that's the core of all of our communities. And the beginning of the revelation by God to the people at Sinai. We read all through the Torah. That musical notation, that musical chant, is something that our students learn how to read because when we have weekday prayers, 4th grade praise as a grade, they have to read the Torah themselves. So one last thing I'm going to share with you about our synagogue, and as you go through our school you'll see, is just like the Torah scroll is written on parchment, on each of our doorways you can see on the side is a small box. They each look different, but inside each of them is a piece of parchment upon which is written the same piece from the Torah that's also in the Tefillin that reminds us to always have God's commandments in front of us, not only in front of us, in between our eyes, as it were, and on our arms, but also on our doorposts, so that every time we go in and out of a space, we remember to live as fully within God's will and God's commandments as we can. And I'm ready if you have questions or if there are things that you see that you want to ask.